Doesn't mean all people support genocide, but there is genocide going on, and there are more black. These are two things that are true. They don't want you to talk about them.
I think there's a difference between posting statistics. Like if someone wants to post a statistic and say like black people are more likely to commit certain types of crimes, I think that's 100% their like moral prerogative. Obviously it can be weaponized in a way that's like, you know, dishonest and weird. I think that's fine. I think the issue is now you're seeing on the right, I mean, you could obviously attest to this, like you're embroiled in a lot of these spaces, is they're not just saying like, you know, black people are maybe more likely statistically to commit these things. They're doing race realism, and that's not founded.
Yeah, no, I understand these get tricky, some of these situations. Like I don't like pushing any racial hate, and I'm always careful, but they're also conversations are real. Like I typically like to avoid the difference between racial. It's just no reason to talk about like intelligence between races and stuff, but there is some real sciences there. I just think it's something that can't be changed, so I don't want it. There's no reason for me to address it. But the cultural, but you still should be able to speak about it because there's real things there. Like, so someone should be able to scientifically detect the differences between races. Say you can't do that is just anti-science.
I'm not saying they can't do it. The same way, again.
But you can't talk about it. You want it censored if people want to like, talk about different IQs.
No. I said we should follow the model of defamation. So I'm saying the way we categorize something as defamation is not that it's just reputationally damaging. It's the fact that it's untrue. So I should be able to not be censored if you raped me, if you actually did it, right? So even though that's malicious, it's reputationally damaging, it's vengeful, we don't consider that defamation if it's true, right? It has to be false. So I'm saying it's fine if you want to do science and purport that like certain races are more likely to commit certain crimes or like statistical analyses. I think that's completely fine. The issue is they're not really doing statistical analyses. They're doing race realism, which isn't founded by science. Like they're pushing something that's false and malicious and reputationally damaging, which if applied to an individual, we'd consider defamatory. And again, I think it's actually so much worse because you can't commit genocide on an individual, but you can see like, especially now, I feel like we need to be even more careful because at least my generation is so antisocial. They're like me. They don't leave the house. They don't have sex. They don't date. They're just like incels like me, like losers who are just like, yeah, the boys at home will love that one. But yeah, yeah. So
losers.
Yeah. So
what the fuck was I gonna say? Got with the OnlyFans.
Yeah, I just started envisioning myself on OnlyFans.com/Farkley. I just got distracted by how good I looked.
Bunch of incels on there.
Oh, right. So we're in such like an antisocial generation that like I feel like now we need to be even more wary of how groups are talked about online because a lot of people now, at least when I was in college, like the second half of my college career was via Zoom because of COVID and stuff. So it's like if you're someone who now is working online or you're doing school online and you're not interacting with people as much and you're going home and you're mostly just interacting with people through video games, Zoom, OnlyFans, watching podcasts and stuff, I think we need to be even more cautious about how groups are talked about because that's going to be like your primary, that's going to be the primary informer for you of how those groups behave. Like at least if you go into the real world and you have like black friends and you have Asian friends, then some like idiot on Twitter saying something about black people, it's easier to brush off. But we're in like a generation, I'm in a generation where a lot of people don't even have friends anymore. So they can't even at least like, they can't even like counterweight the types of like vitriol they're seeing online with their real world information about black people, Asians, women, because all their information about women is coming from fucking Fresh and Fit and like Red Pill because they're not going on dates. They're not talking to women. It's all coming from OnlyFans and Red Pill and stuff. So I think now we have even a higher moral onus to try and like make sure the information we're seeing online is accurate since now it's basically behaving in lieu of like real world information.
See, this is back to the problem of who decides what's accurate. You know, like they said, they banned all the COVID shit. It was all true, the people they were banning, you know? So that's the problem. It just gets back to the same thing over and over. We need to, that's why it's the First Amendment. I mean, there's a reason why your parents moved from India to America, the greatest country, you know? My parents aren't moving from America to India.
It was to post anti-black things on Twitter, you're right.
Because they wanted to be like, these damn N-words.
Yeah, it was for the free speech protections, not the better economic prospects, not for better rights for women. It was so they could tweet like Jake Shields about Holocaust denial.
Yeah, they probably don't. Yeah, like why can't you deny the Holocaust? That's the thing. I can get arrested in 19 countries from Europe by going to, and I won't deny it.
Well, I concede it. Yeah.
If I say things that are real, like break down details, it'll get pulled off Spotify, pulled off YouTube. So we can't talk about the Holocaust on this. I had a guy come on my show who was a chemist, autistic dude. He came. He was going through, and he's like, "Holy shit! Chemically, it wasn't possible for this." So he went to the media like all excited. And instead they threw him in jail for 5 years. At his trial, they wouldn't let him put a defense forward because people were able to put defenses, they could win the case. That happened in Canada. A guy put defense forwards and the jury is like, oh, he was right with what he says with information. So like, why can't we discuss these things to find out if they're true or not? We can question the Armenian genocide. We can question the genocide in China, in Russia, in Cambodia. But you can't ask questions about this one.
I agree with you. That's why I preface by saying, like, when I'm talking about censorship, I'm never talking about like imprisonment, right? Like, I'm obviously against
You don't
that.
think I should be arrested for?
I think you should be arrested for a lot of things. But no, I'm not talking about criminal punishment. We were talking about social media suppression and things like that. And then also, like I said, if someone's purporting something that's true, I don't think that qualifies as defamation, and I don't think it should be outlawed, because again, the model I'm using is like it should follow what we consider defamatory speech or harmful speech or doxing or whatever it is about a specific person. And then again, like I said, I mean, like
we're just stuck back at the point of who decides what's true. Things are constantly changing.
Well, here's the thing,
even
like
science isn't like science is always changing. The whole point, true, you have to always be able to investigate things.
Here's the thing is like we could do this continuum fallacy of being like, well, truth is really hard to like narrowly defined within certain parameters, therefore nobody should be the arbiter of truth. But at the end of the day, if you're someone who's espousing that you think porn should be restricted to people, obviously you have some definition of
But
porn.
That's not talking about an idea.
But I could easily
Don't shush me.
I'm censoring you on your own podcast. I could just as easily say, okay, well, that's a slippery slope, because what's considered porn? Is porn any material that a guy could jerk off to? Because by that logic, you should check my Instagram bookmark statistics. A lot of guys are jerking off to my fucking clothed photos. Is that technically pornographic content? It's a pornographic content if I do a TikTok dance. Like, that's also a slippery slope. Who's the arbiter of pornography? So don't you think by your own logic it's contradictory to say that we should have restrictions on pornography?
I agree with the pornography one. That's why I said I need to work out my exact opinion.
We'll work it out right now.
Because it is very tricky.
I can help you.
And that's the problem. It is a slippery slope. It's like, I don't think that type of stuff should be banned, but I also don't think kids should be able to look up rape porn at like 11 years old either.
I agree. And I'm saying, we're saying the same thing. You're saying that, yeah, it could be a slippery slope, but maybe we should still have some standard of restriction and of censorship about how we talk about porn. And I'm saying, yes, the delineation of what's considered hate speech and not hate speech could also be a slippery slope, but I still think we should aim to try to narrowly define what should be considered unacceptable hate speech, same way you have in your head an ideal form, if we work it out, what should be considered unacceptable pornography to minors to see. Because if you think porn is bad for minors to see, what about kids, again, like they're going to school all day and then they come home and they're being told by like these alt-right dickheads, like, don't trust your teachers, like, don't trust the institutions.
People like me.
Yeah, like it should 11-year-olds have access to things like, I guess I would ask, like, I mean, you have a kid. Like, if you had another kid, would you rather that they go to school for 18 years, or would you rather they stay home and you hand them an iPad and you say, figure it out for yourself? Truth is subjective. Truth is relative. Go figure it out. Like, on some level, like you guys, like you, as much as you oppose institutions, like you do concede that people should go through the pipeline of, should go through like an objective authoritarian figure when it comes to things like knowledge and education.
I think I learned a lot more on my own than I did with school. I don't think I learned that much. I think as a father, the thing you have to teach your kids to think for themselves, how to critically analyze everything. You can't just tell your kid go to school or hand them an iPad. You have to talk with them. You can't tell them what's right or wrong. You have to teach them to question everything, including me. You know, it's like everything, and think for yourself critically.
I agree. I guess I'm saying, like, if you're going to send your kid to school, like a 10-year-old, and let's say they also have like a smartphone and they're going home and this 10-year-old is learning all this stuff in school, like history, biology, science, sociology, whatever, not sociology, but then they go home and they can just go on Twitter and they're told this revisionist or alternative view of history, of science and whatever. Why would they even give any like ethos to the school system if they're being told?
Maybe they shouldn't give an ethos to the school system. That's kind of
a 10-year-old.
A lot of what we're being taught. There's some things that are true, but a lot of what we're taught in school is absolute bullshit, and that's, you know, people need to dig and find what's true. Now, there's some of it's, I mean, it gets tricky.
a 10-year-old, it should be up to them to decide whether they want to listen to their teacher or they want to listen to a flat earther online about the world.
You have to go to school to learn how to like follow directions, that type of stuff. I think it's more for that, but they don't really teach you. Teachers don't teach you much knowledge. They're getting paid like $60,000 a year. They're out doing coke the night before, you know, partying with some Chad. They don't give a shit about their kids.
Sure. I guess my point was there is obviously a value to the school system. Like you said, it teaches you how to like, you know, follow directions, and then also probably critically think and learn the basics.
When they teach you critical thinking in school.
What about teach you the basics?